Shall I start?
Yeah. Okay.
Hello, everyone. I've been given half an hour. One of my earlier bosses told me if you can't say it in half an hour, don't bother. So here's innovation in half an hour. I think it's Barack Obama who once pointed out that we only have one planet and it's not a very big one. And that means that the constraints of the planet will start to bite pretty rapidly, and most of the products that we use happily today without a care will have to change. And that means we're going to need innovation with a capital I. Now, we are in the middle of Brexit with all that consternation and uncertainty. It brings into question what is the future of Britain. Are we to become an offshore island to Europe, what Newfoundland is to North America, what Madagascar is to Africa? Maybe. We'll come back to Madagascar in a minute or two. But something needs to be done. Innovation needs to be fostered. We used to be pretty good at it. I think we've gone off the boil in recent years, hence me standing up here and saying something about it. Okay, a little bit of role play will help us to get us going. Imagine that a very powerful, influential American consultant, Mac something or other, is very impressed by the doings of ANPA, the perspicacity, the intellectual power, and have commissioned us all to be a sort of a shock team to deal with the really tricky problems that come up on the doorstep. Okay, got it? Now, Mac something or another have received an international airline, and they are concerned. They say, we are today commissioning aircraft with a life of 30 to 35 years, but we know for certain that inside 20 years, fossil fuels will either become too expensive or it will be illegal to dump large quantities of carbon dioxide into the upper atmosphere, or both. So we think something needs to be done. And our question is this: can you foresee that nuclear-powered passenger-carrying flight will be the answer? That's the problem facing us. What would you do? Well, I'll tell you what you would do as good researchers. First of all, you would do a literature search. You would find that in the 1960s, in the middle of the Cold War, the Americans did indeed put a nuclear reactor on board a military aircraft, mounted centrally in the fuselage, ducting hot air to the engines in the wings. They got as far as running up the nuclear reactor in flight, but it was not driving the aircraft, it was just running. They concluded, in the midst of a lot of radiation, that nuclear-powered flight was possible, no mention of passenger carrying, and then the whole thing was abandoned because it wasn't getting anywhere, radiation was too much. It was mirrored by a parallel exercise in Russia. I'm not sure what the outcome was, but I do know that radiation was formidable. Neutrons everywhere. Also, the Americans constructed a scramjet, which I think is a supersonic ramjet, powered internally by a nuclear reactor, miniaturized, very powerful. It produced as much thrust as an F-16 does today. It consumed vast amounts of power. It was due to fly at Mach 3. Again, huge radiation. It was lightweight, only 6 tons. And that's what you would discover. And after that, not very much. What would you do next as a team? I think you would conduct a SWOT analysis. You would look at the strengths of nuclear-powered aircraft in the context of passenger carrying, and you would look at the weaknesses. What about the strengths? Let's participate in this. Can anyone volunteer? What are the benefits of having a nuclear-powered airplane? Obviously, no CO2 at higher atmosphere. We take that as a given.
Infinite flight and practically unlimited flight endurance.
Practically
unlimited flight endurance.
Absolutely, huge range.
Yeah.
And that's a big one. Fly directly from Heathrow to Australia, put
Conversely, you're not fueling.
Yes.
Say goodbye to July.
Yes, yes. Good. No
Absolutely.
refueling stops.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other advantages?
If it's fusion, it'll be the byproduct is water, so there'll be no pollution.
Yes, but fusion is not quite, we don't know quite what we're doing with fusion in that particular context yet, but fusion is a big opportunity. What about the radiation problems?
Well, that's
I'd use a thorium reactor. I'd use a thorium reactor.
Yes. Which,
As opposed to the usual materials.
thorium would certainly be a cheaper fuel and just as
Indeed.
effective.
Available in vast quantities in India.
Indeed, so you're voting for it, you like the idea.
well, fusion will have hydrogen. I mean, they have a decoherence problem. As soon as that's solved, we'll have.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Right.
What about aircraft
I've not got very
terminals?
far yet.
No need to refuel, no fuel Bowsers, yes?
Yeah, that'll be the same.
That sort of thing. What about weight? A large passenger carrying aircraft can take on board 190 tons of fuel. That's a lot of weight. I mean, the nuclear reactor in a submarine these days is 100 tons, and you do better than that, I think. And if you had light air engines out on the pods and the wings, you would save even there's weight to be saved. So there's a fair bit going for it. Forgive me if I press on, I've only got half an hour.
all right.
What about the problems? What are the difficulties associated with nuclear power passenger carriers?
Disaster if it crashes.
Yes.
Sorry, who?
A disaster if it crashes.
Yes.
Because you get
Absolutely.
massive nuclear contamination.
Yes, nuclear contamination if it crashes.
If you have a crash, and you're going to have one or two,
Yes.
there's a huge contamination.
We've got a flying Chernobyl in the air every, you know.
And
Yes, indeed.
it wouldn't be quite that.
In that context, can you imagine any
Depends where it
airport allowing a nuclear powered aircraft to land and take off?
No.
It wouldn't happen. One crash and you're out of business for 20,000 years.
Yeah.
It simply won't happen.
Exactly.
What about radiation?
Yes, huge radiation.
Yes, how do they handle this problem in submarines?
Big problem with radiation. All nuclear reactors, you produce loads of neutrons all over the place. I don't care what you're doing. And so the radiation is a big problem.
But they have nuclear submarines.
Yes.
Yes,
So how do they handle that problem?
shielding. Any more difficulties?
Well,
I mean,
it's a broader difficulty with any kind of innovation which seeks to address, mass transport. You're creating distance.
Yeah.
As much as you're creating a machine to transfer from A to B, you're actually creating the distance between A to B.
What do you mean?
This is well. If you look at every development of mass transportation, we live far away. We travel the world because we've created distance with our technologies for transport.
Oh, I
would
see
you
what you
fly
mean.
on a nuclear-powered aircraft?
Probably not.
Would you sail on a nuclear-powered ship?
Probably not.
Would you use electricity driven by a nuclear reactor?
Maybe.
Probably
Well,
already do.
would I have
Certainly do.
a Would I have a choose? Preferably not.
Definitely not.
Do we conclude that this is a non-starter?
Yes.
At this stage of the game.
Can we have a show of hands? Who believes that as an expert group, which you are, you should tell the client, the airline, don't waste your money, give up, think of something else? Who thinks that?
For the moment.
Who thinks in innovation there's always a way,
There's always a way.
let's keep going?
Yeah, there was a way.
With qualifications, yeah.
I think you
What
have
are
to be
your
very careful.
qualifications?
Oh, well, just keep going on a small trial and basis, but I wouldn't throw much in the way of resources at it. My inclination is to go with the first, but I think there's always a wild card. I wouldn't close down the
So
research
by
group.
hedging your bets.
I hedge my bets, of course.
Okay, good move.
Like any good politician, I hedge my bets.
There are Slovene physicists
So sorry, yes?
There are Slovene physicists who've been working on solar power
So
for
you want
aircraft.
a bit of trickle money, and you're going to
Well,
fly
well,
because the
this
sunshine will
is-
charge up your batteries.
I haven't looked at it closely.
No
but
chance.
I know. Well, no. I mean, Don't you believe in innovation, Geoffrey? In possibility?
But
But it's certainly, I mean, in terms of any alternative...
would you
any
put your money into
triple
that?
money,
No.
maybe
No,
if I
wouldn't.
don't have any money.
Microwave beam engines have already been designed, right? So they're possible for aircraft also.
Okay. So, I think we have a divided view. May I offer you my own view? And that is that in innovation there is always a way. And the big problem is, of course, I think the problem of nuclear crash. If you can get over that difficulty, and if you can satisfy the certificating authorities, the FAA, the CAA, those sorts of people, then you might make it work. Because what is the alternative? The alternative is that the civil aviation industry goes out of business.
Well, that's not necessarily true. If we can get enough carbon recovery, I mean, there's various ways of getting that. Plant enough trees. We haven't done this stuff yet. It's
So you want to keep going?
No, I just think your assertion was wrong. That's all.
Oh, I saw that then. We'll talk about it later.
The alternative is decrease economy.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, maybe. Well, not necessarily. Hold on a minute, chaps. Hold on a minute. How about a hybrid system? You take off and you land using conventional gas turbine engines. 10 miles out from Heathrow, a nuclear-powered drone appears. It docks at the rear end. It pushes you to Sydney. 10 miles out, it decouples, lips off to Christmas Island.
Or 100.
Hold on, let the man finish.
Yeah, let him finish.
And then you land safely at Sydney. When you want to go on to San Francisco, you phone it up like phoning for a taxi. You couple up and off you go. It's a hybrid system. The nuclear-powered aircraft does not take off or land. It can fly from point to point over the ocean. Is that not a possibility? Thank you.
Well, a lot of flight is over land.
Well,
It wouldn't be any use for transcontinental flights.
there would be difficulties in developing the thing, but you have a concept about what you can...
You have a concept where for purely sort of flight where almost the whole of the flight is across the ocean, the concept is...
Now the point is this. Before you are in innovation, it's research, it's blue sky thinking. You need a load of people with funny haircuts to have funny thoughts. When you have a concept that might just work, you want a different gang to help you.
Sure.
Achieve smart suits, achievement orientated, get it done, catch the market, that sort of thing. And that's the problem. They're different people, they're different teams, it's different cultures. And that possibly is why we have been good at coming forward with the concept, terrible at the realisation and making the thing work in the market. And there are dozens of examples of that.
Especially in
Can
aerospace.
I just ask though, I mean, because if we're talking about the problem of the environment, climate change, all of this stuff, the dodo, the question is, what is the problem? Is it an engineering problem or is it a political problem? And I think there's a real tension here between an engineering solution and a political solution.
You mean something more radical.
I'm
you mean
not
a complete cultural transformation.
Yes, I'm talking about the problem of keeping the airliners going.
Yeah.
Well, but the airliners may be the problem. So,
indeed. Well, you're going to travel by ship. Oh, but you don't want to do that.
Well, but you see, I mean, you
Mass transportation may itself be the problem.
yeah, I
just want to add that what I read about new generation of nuclear plants that will happen in Chernobyl is not possible now because at the time of Chernobyl it was mostly manual operated. Now it's computer operated. If something characteristic doesn't go right, it shuts out completely. Same thing maybe in the airplanes. It can just switch to manual.
So we stop having holidays overseas and stay at home.
Well, it's quite nice here, isn't it?
Okay. Let me press on because otherwise I'm halfway through. Okay. So we've sorted out how the airline industry can carry on. What about the other problems? Motor cars. It is absolutely obscene for a vehicle weighing 1.5 tons to be used to convey one person weighing 100 weight and a half. We poison our cities. The congestion due to parking is horrendous. The whole thing has to change.
Makes everyone stressed in the process.
Well,
Completely agree there.
it's unacceptable. It's absurd. What is the answer?
Cultural shift in attitudes in favour of public transport?
Right? When you go to chair your board, you can't turn up on a push bike.
Why not?
Teleconference.
That's just a matter of cultural attitudes. You can,
Your
physically.
country mansion is 40 miles away from your boardroom.
Tough.
It won't do.
We created that distance.
The answer is obvious. We have inflatable boats, we have inflatable houses. We need inflatable motor cars. Puff it up, it's a Bentley Continental. Suck it down, it's a shopping trolley. 25 kilos. You shove it into your locker, you charge it up. It is the answer.
With nanotechnology, I think that's a very viable idea.
I think it is. I can imagine a sort of a pneumatic suspension system with a bit of pneumatic damping. I don't know how to design an inflatable windscreen wiper, but that's a detail. Maybe you've got some ideas.
I'm sure there are lots of teething problems.
So that would answer the problem of personal transportation. What about the homes we live in? The planet is small, the surface area is precious, it's limited. We simply cannot afford to build homes on the surface. Ladies and gentlemen, if we're going to breed like rabbits, we're going to have to live like rabbits in homes. 50 feet underground, light pipe, nice warm burrow, constant temperature, no wind loss, no noise loss. You can be very comfortable.
You sound just like Dr. Strangelove in the final reel of. Just don't let a mine shaft gap develop with the Ruskies.
What about the subject of health? Yeah. We have a very critical situation on our own National Health Service. Other countries do it differently. There are equivalent problems and difficulties. The cost of training doctors, absolutely prohibitive. Not enough doctors, not enough. Preventive medicine, terrible. What's the answer?
Change the mentality and culture of the medical profession, who are the main reason why the cost of training doctors is so prohibitive, and the main reason why preventive medicine is not given anything like enough priority.
Well, I got it right, because the answer is that dogs are much better than doctors. They can actually smell the things you suffer.
Exactly.
So in future you will go to your GP and there will be a large friendly Labrador.
Very good suggestion.
And a couple of slips. And he'll have a typewriter. You need to develop a dog-driven typewriter. The Americans are ahead of us here, by the way. Did you know that in the 1930s there was a typewriter developed for a horse? And it would stand that up. So you want a smaller version of that, but I'm sure that's not too difficult. And the dog might type out, well, I think you're going to have Parkinson's disease in 5 years' time. I'm a bit worried about your prostate, but I'm referring you to Battersea Dogs Home, where a consultant will sniff your tender pod, your lower regions.
Very good suggestion. It's a true case. A wife of somebody complained that her husband smelled differently, and he turned to have out Parkinson's disease later on. Then the doctors, the researchers, gave her a lot of T-shirts to smell. She identified all the Parkinson's disease patients except for one that didn't have, but he developed Parkinson's a year later. So, and that's where the
so I had your agreement.
Yes.
earthquake fund.
That's the medical problem solved.
Woof.
What else?
Well, no, the problem with diagnosis, you haven't solved the medical problem itself. You've just suggested a different methodology for diagnosis.
Cheaper than doctors.
Yeah, a diagnosis, but that has nothing to do with treatment and cure. You haven't addressed treatment or cure at all.
By the way, this particular dog will say, I'm sorry, I can't sign your sick certificate. I think you're perfectly healthy. You'll go back to work. What about predicting the future? The dangers that we face, earthquake prediction. Major problem though.
Dogs are good at that too.
The better creatures are toads.
Really?
There was a very good article in Nature. This happened in Italy, by the way. Apparently, there are parts of the Apennines that are infested with toads. And there's a British university whose major strength is toad technology. And they sent a researcher to research this area, a lady on her PhD actually, went out every night to count the male toads that she could find in a particular area. And it varied. She could normally find 90. It varied, statistically this way and that. One night, no toads. Earthquake the following day. So the toads are wonderful at predicting earthquakes. They really are. And so there's a huge market opportunity for the Italians. Rent a toad.
Rent a toad.
Our national debt would drop immediately.
No toad, answer, either no earthquake or it's been eaten by the fox. So these things have answers. They can be tackled. There are more, I could cite more, but I won't go into that. Let's just make the point. I think if Britain is to have a future role in the world, a future identity, not to mention being able to trade profitably and maintain our status, innovation is the answer. We're not going to make mousetraps cheaper than the Chinese or the Vietnamese or the Indonesians or whatever else. Innovation is what we have been good at in the past. Innovation is a role that we are respected for throughout the world for past achievements. And that's where we have to go. It needs support, it needs government initiative, and if we don't do it, we're as dead as the dodo. Now, what does being dead as the dodo mean? Well, I've actually brought a dead dodo. You might like to pass it round. That's what's going to happen to us. How do you stimulate innovation? I've found this to be very useful. It's a heavily gold-plated egg. And please don't drop it because it does have a value. And if you give it a rub, you can sort of think beautiful thoughts. It's a very good means of stimulating innovation. Would you like to pass that round? I found it a helpful object.
And what are these two splendid trilobites?
Yes, and my final thought is this.
Ammonites.
Yes.
Ammonites.
You're absolutely right. This is an ammonite. It's been cut in half. So it actually sort of goes right. And I promised you we'd hear more from Madagascar. This actually comes from Madagascar. And it's about 100 million years old. And if a tiny sea creature 100 million years ago could actually work out how to produce a spiral that is as beautiful as that, constructing chamber after chamber, then surely we could work out how to do a sort of innovation today in this country of ours. The lesson is from the ammonite. We can pass that around.
Yeah, well, they're extinct.
So, do we have any comments or questions?
Richard, we're one experiment away from third regime physics. physics and third regime physics, we just measured 100 waves to Broglie waves. We'll be able to constructively summate the Broglie waves to third regime physics and have shields. So you can have enough shields so that a nuclear power thing crashes, like the recording box isn't destroyed on any kind of a crash, even fire, so that can be taken care of there.
Well, actually, if you have a nuclear drone pushing up your rear, the solid angle that you need to have beryllium over is quite small.
Yeah.
You can kill those big migrating geese and what have you on the other side, but actually protecting the airline passengers from radiation.
Plus, if it's 6,000 feet, it can coast to, unless it blows up.
Mark, just a comment. I was kind of hoping you were joking, and there was part of it where clearly you were joking. There's a book by Stafford Beer, who is an organisational cybernetician, and it's called Platform for Change. He argues that the greatest danger to the planet is the way that we think in terms of homo faber, the man the maker, particularly man the tool maker. And our mindset that always says there's always an engineering solution or there's always an innovation that we can make is actually a cause of the pathology. Now, his view is that actually what we need is institutional transformation and political transformation. And his book is about the systems organisation or the systems reorganisation of institutions. Now, I just think as a counter-argument to what you presented, that needs to be seriously considered.
I couldn't disagree with you more.
Yeah.
I think get on with it.
Yeah, but I think this is a key.
If you pass the institutions and the politicians, 10 years' time and we'll be nowhere.
Yeah, well, that's because
the time is now.
But that's because our political institutions are very ineffective.
Can I be provocative, Mark? This chap, what's his name?
Stafford Beer.
Yeah, he sounds like he would have done jolly well in company with Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge.
Sorry.
Well, if you want to take a society back to the Neolithic, there's your model. There's your model. Kill 2 million, kill the population trying to do it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's my reaction to that.
Well, I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Well, it does seem, but you say let's go back to much more primitive. Yeah, okay, you volunteer and go first. All the people who preach this, back to the Neolithic doctrine, except for a handful of them, like give credit where it's due, people like Grothendieck who actually lived by their creed. I don't see many of them leading the way. I see a lot of people in green wellies, driving around in 4x4s and jumping in Learjets, going around giving talks on how to save the planet, financed by dear Zach Goldsmith. I see a lot of nauseating hypocrisy here from the, the back to the...
Well, I agree with you.
Yeah.
But I'm not arguing for that. I'm just saying that these problems are political. They're to do with people talking to each other.
Well, it's to do with mindset. You see, I don't think it's to do with going back to the Neolithic at all. It's to do with how do we actually move on at a deeper level. We know, for example, that...
Well, by turning our backs on technology.
So we know that 90% of our brains we do not use.
And 90% of the people can't read in the world.
That's ridiculous. I'm sorry, that figure's ridiculous.
We have not worked on developing our own minds and what our minds can do. I mean, like the sort of smelling Parkinson's disease is very, very...
Well, that's fascinating. I think fascinating. I agree.
Well, actually, it's possible. We have
done with the analytics.
we work on what we can do outside.
But I don't see that as conflicting with...
It's always so bad.
Yes, it's both hands. But I don't see this turning your back on Homo faber, I think, is a really bad idea. Sorry to be provocative.
Well, our politicians found a way to do it anyway. They invented the research assessment exercise.
Yes.
Which is the biggest blow to creativity since modern.
Well, and not to mention citation indices and all the rest of it. No, here. No, I agree. I'm not suggesting that we should put... Well, I'm certainly not suggesting we should look to politicians for the solution at any level. But what an absolutely wonderful, entertaining talk.
by the way, Geoffrey made a special effort to come today, so...
Well, it's really good of him. I think you lifted our hearts.